Well, I'm looking to make sure that we've got people in the session. I wanted to point out that we will have a recording of this, just like we record all of our webinars, and we will have that posted on our online help. If you go to eduphoria.zendesk.com and then go into the training and webinars section, look at archived webinars, and then there's a folder called past TIA webinars. That's where this one will be located. You will also, those of you who are registered, will get a follow-up email that will have a link to this webinar as well. So you can either get it from your email or you can get it from online. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Looks like we have nobody in our waiting room right now. So today is Interrater Reliability, our first lunch and learn of the new year. And it's going to be a 30-minute session where we will talk about what Interrater reliability means and how you can get that data from our system. I'm Paige Parker, the Senior Professional Learning Coach, and I'll be walking you through this process today. I'm going to start with some definitions. What do we mean when we say Interrater reliability? It is basically saying that the scores are reliable from one rater to another. So it's the measurements that determine how similar the data is when it's collected by different raters. And so we want it to be the same. If you get one appraiser, you will get the same kind of scoring that you get from another appraiser. Another definition that's important in this conversation is validity. So that refers to how accurately a method measures what it's supposed to measure. In our case, those districts that are using t-tests, that is a state measure that has been determined to be valid. So we don't have to worry about the validity side if we're using an already validated measure. If you're building your own measures, that is something that you would want to consider as well. Make sure that you're truly measuring what you think you're measuring. And then the other definition that's important here is reliability. And that refers to the degree to which the result can be considered or can be depended on to be consistent and accurate. And this is that reliability between raters that we're going to be talking about. So we want to know that each rater is consistent in the way they're scoring, and that also they're consistent between raters. So not only am I scoring consistently each time, but I'm scoring the same way my other appraisers are scoring. So there are four graphics that kind of go along with these concepts. On the left, we have something that is reliable but not valid. All the raters are close together and they're rating very similarly, but the measure itself is not valid. We don't really have to worry about that one because of t-tests. Like I said, we've determined that our system is valid. The second one is when they're valid but not reliable, and we do see this sometimes with our system. So we have a valid instrument that we're using to measure, but we're not in sync with all the other raters, and so the scores are kind of scattered all over the place. Then we have the third graphic that shows they're neither reliable nor valid. They're not grouped together in either way around the target or in a single area of the target. Again, we shouldn't have to worry about that one because we do have validity. And then the final one is completely on target, both reliable and valid, and that's what we're going for. So really, in the t-test situation, we could have these two options: a valid instrument t-test, but not reliable in that our raters are not consistent. Either I'm not consistent myself, or I'm not consistent with the other raters in my district. Or what we're shooting for, again, is that both reliable and valid. So Interrater reliability, again, is the relative consistency in ratings provided by multiple judges of multiple targets. And that's one of the things that you guys are looking for to determine, are your ratings reliable, and then also to provide data for if you're part of the TIA program. So how do you determine that Interrater reliability? I'm going to talk about a couple of different ways that you can do that in eduphoria. The first, well, there are 3 ways you can do it in general. You can compare existing appraisal results. So you can look at the data that you already have, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. You can send teams in to do an appraisal of the same lesson and then compare those results. Or you can have larger teams appraise a video of a lesson. And the reason I would say the larger teams would appraise a video is you just can't send that many people into a classroom without interrupting the instruction. So those are 3 ways that you can get the information to see how did we do. If we're all looking at the same thing, did we rate it the same way? If you don't have the time or the opportunity to do those actual same lesson comparisons, you can compare existing appraisal results and get data that's going to be very close to exact Interrater reliability. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first way that you can do it is by looking at appraisal data in Appraisal Analysis. And so I'm going to go over to Strive, and I'm going to go into Appraisal Reports. I'm going to go into Appraisal Analysis, and I'm going to set up the image that we just saw and show you what you can do here. So in Appraisal Analysis, I can look at all these different elements and get out a snapshot of data that I need at this moment. So I'm going to say I want to pick the T-test framework, and I can pick as much or as little as I want to in terms of that framework. I could pick all 4 domains, or I could pick just 1 domain, or I could pick just 1 dimension if I wanted to. So you can go and look at anything that you're interested in. I just need to know how we're doing with differentiation. You could pull just that one. Then I need to select a document to evaluate, and I'm going to say observations. You could do your summatives at this point in the year. That would probably be looking at last year's summatives, but you can pull whatever information you want into this document and into this analysis. I'm going to set a time period. Normally, I would want to do 1 year at a time, and the default is always going to be what is set as the instructional calendar for my system. So it automatically defaults there, but if I wanted to change that, I could click on my start date and I could back it up if I wanted to get 2 years worth of information in there. So you can do whatever you want to in terms of your dates. I'm just going to pull there. So I've got a little bit more time in my time period. You can set that to be whatever you want. Then I'm going to scroll down to my groups, and there are lots of ways that I can do this. I could look at the whole campus, but that's not going to give me the Interrater reliability data that I want. It's not going to be a comparison of appraisers. It's just going to show me how my teacher scored. So what I want to do is scroll down to the appraisers, and I'm going to pick 3 appraisers from one campus to compare. Right now, you only have 3. You can only add 3 groups. So when I click on Adrian becomes group 1 and is going to be salmon colored. And then I'll come down here to my additional group, and I'm going to scroll down and get Dylan. Dylan becomes group 2 and is that goldenrod color. And then I'm going to scroll down and add a 3rd group. And my 3rd group is going to be Austin, and Austin is going to be the sort of purplish color. So I can compare 3 different appraisers using this method, and I would click the Analyze button. Now, I don't have data in here because this is a demo site. So that was the setup. I wanted to show you how you would build with my 3 groups. Who am I comparing? And then what it's going to look like is this. Group 1 is that salmon colored, group 2 is the goldenrod color, and group 3 is the purple. And I can see, are they in sync on this particular dimension? So I have a pretty wide variation here at the proficient level between my 3 evaluators. So I would not consider this a particularly good example of Interrater reliability because I'm not seeing that much consistency. Now, what I do see that's consistent is that nobody gave the score of developing or improvement needed. I don't know that that's a good thing. Maybe there are some teachers on this campus who are truly developing, but we've got that, I don't want to give them a bad grade syndrome going on. So we need to look at, are these accurate for the teachers? And then why is there this variation between the raters? Because they should be more similar than that. I wouldn't expect them to be exact because they're not evaluating the exact same teachers, but I would expect them to be closer than this in terms of comparing how many proficients they gave, how many accomplished they gave, distinguished, etc. So that's one way to look at it. You can pull those, it's a graphic way to look at it, and you can see a good image, and you can pull 3 of your evaluators at a time. I pulled 3 from the same campus. I could have pulled an elementary principal, a middle school principal, and a high school principal to look at that vertical alignment. You can do whatever groups you want, but that's one way of getting a snapshot, just sort of a big picture idea of how we're doing with Interrater reliability. If I want to do a little more specific information, then I'm going to pull some data in and get a spreadsheet and do some manipulation in that spreadsheet. And that's what I'm going to show you next. So I would go to Strive. I would go this time to Appraisal Reports, and I'm going to pull my Document Analysis Report. I would find whichever document I want from that list. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to go find my observation document and select it. And then I'm going to come to my print button, my drop down, and I'm going to say that I want to export that to a spreadsheet. And it's going to generate a spreadsheet for me of all of the results. And I'm going to open it up. And this is what it pulls from the system. Now, again, this is my demo site. It doesn't have very many results in there, but this is what it would look like. And what you're going to have to do is a little bit of cleanup. So I just enabled my editing. I would want to remove all the columns that are for evidence. This is where your administrators are going to write in text boxes. And if I'm looking for numerical data only, then I want to remove those. So I would just want to go in and delete each of those columns that are evidence columns and keep only the dimension columns that actually have a rating. One of the other documents that popped up was this spreadsheet that you can find on the Teach for Texas website in the TIA resources. This is what TIA is wanting about your teachers. So this tells you all the fields that you're going to have to put together in the report when you share observation data about your teachers. Campus name and the teacher's information. Some of these fields are already in the system, and you can pull them in. They're going to be in that report. For example, if I come over here to this one, you can see what I just pulled. It shows me the campus. It shows me the appraiser's name. It shows me the teacher's name and teacher's ID and what subject was being evaluated. Now, TIA is not asking for begin and end times, so those are fields that I could delete. Just take those columns right out, just like I'm going to take out the evidence columns. But I'm going to do that cleanup in order to get a little more usable data. So we're going to do the magic mirror thing, and ta-da, I have some cleaned up data here. I've removed all of the evidence fields, and I have only my dimension fields here. If I go back and look at my specific dimensions, what is being required from TIA, they're really only asking for domains 2 and 3. So I could go into my spreadsheet if I want to, and I could remove all of the domain 1 fields, and then I could remove all of the domain 4 fields because they're not necessarily needed by TIA. If you want to have it for your own information to see how those are being evaluated, and if you have Interrater reliability there, that's fine too. So now I've got my information in this spreadsheet, I'm going to select my top row, and I want to add a filtering option. So I'm going to say I just want to do a custom that filter icon, which gives me a drop down menu so I can sort a little bit. And that's going to be helpful to me when I'm playing with this data. The next thing that I want to do is create a new sheet down here at the bottom. I have named this one Alpha because it has the ratings in their Alpha format, the way they were scored on the document. Cancel that. So I want to create a new sheet down here, and I'm going to rename that one Numeric. So I'm going to come to my Alpha field, sorry about that, and I'm going to select everything and copy it. And then I'm going to go to my sheet that's called Numeric, and I'm going to paste everything in. So I will just come over here to that second sheet and paste everything in there. So I did that because I want to leave my Alpha alone. I don't want to have to recreate that later on, but I do want this to be in numeric format. So again, I want to be able to sort or filter that top row. And now I'm going to use find and replace. I'm just going to select my whole spreadsheet on this one tab, and I'm going to do a find and replace, which is Control H in Windows, and it's under the edit menu in Mac, but I'm not sure of the shortcut. I'm going to say I want to find all of my distinguished and replace them with 5s. And then I'm going to find all of my accomplished and replace them with 4s. And then all of my proficients and replace those with 3s. So I'm getting a numeric value for each of the ratings in the system. I must have misspelled distinguished because there are some there. My developings will become 2s. Distinguished is going to be a 5. Okay. So now I have all numeric values for all of my ratings, and I can actually use that to get some data to do some comparisons. The next thing that I want to do is look at each individual appraiser. Now, this information on this one spreadsheet is going to be something that you can use when you report the observations to TIA. So, because they're going to ask you for specific teachers' names, what class was being evaluated for that teacher, and how that teacher was rated. So for your teacher data, this is all you need. But if I'm going to take it to the next step for Interrater reliability, I need to do one more thing. I'm going to narrow it down by appraiser. So I'm going to say I just want to look at Eric Kane's. I've already done Adam Chandler and Asa Buchanan. So I'll do Erica Kane and then show you how I did this, and then how we can do the comparisons. So I'm going to put Erica's name in, and for the summative, instead of the summative, I'm going to call it an appraisal average, and I can pull the high school in if I want to. Okay, so now I have the information about who I'm looking at here. I'm going to come to that first row of numbers, and I'm going to come up to my formula tool up at the top, and I'm going to say I want to average. And it guesses well and says that I'm averaging 3 through 47, which is what I'm really doing, and that's going to give me the average for this appraiser for this dimension. Now, if I just grab that corner dot and drag the formula over, it will copy that formula into each of these other fields and generate the formulas for each one of those fields. So now I can see what Erica Kane's average was in each dimension. And I can also come to this square over here, the cell to the right of my last average, and I'm going to tell it I want to average again. This time it knows that I'm trying to average horizontally, And so it's going to give me a single score or a single average of what Erica Kane's ratings are as a whole. So I've gotten lots of data there about this one appraiser. Before I do anything else, I want to convert these from formulas, because if I click on any of the cells, you'll notice that up at the top, it doesn't show me the true number. It shows me the formula that derived that number. So I need to select that row, and I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to do paste special. If you use the little arrow to the right, you can see that paste special values is the one with the 1, 2, 3 on the clipboard, and that's what I want. So now that I have pasted special values, when I click on the cell, I get the same information up here that I get in the cell itself. So it's not showing me the formula any longer, it's showing me the actual number, and that's what I wanted. So now I'm going to copy that whole row again, and I'm going to go over to a new sheet that I made that's called Compare Averages, where I've already pasted in the information about my other two appraisers. I'm going to come here and paste in the information about Erica Kane, and now I have comparison data. So I can compare between these three evaluators, what were their averages for all the evaluations that they did, all the observations, because that's the data I'm looking at here, and then I can look at their overall scores as appraisers. So that gives me just a snapshot. I can look at it, but if I'm a visual person and I want to see a graphic like I saw in appraisal analysis, I can come over here and highlight. Well, actually, let me just delete that column. Okay, what I want to have is the appraisers' names for each of my dimensions, and then I can go and say I want to add in a graphic. I clicked on my insert button, and I'm going to choose this stacked line graph. So I'm going to say I want to do the stacked lines. That's what it's going to look like, and it's going to show me for each one of the dimensions, where are they? Asa's the blue line, Adam's the orange line, Erica's the gray line. I can see that Adam is a little more generous, especially in the professional area in domain 4. They're fairly close, but if I zoom in and see, how close is that close enough? And then also my target is proficiency for my teachers, and every single one of their averages is above proficient. So is that a realistic picture of what's going on? So I can get a chart, and I chose to do the stacked line. You could choose to do whatever type you want. I'm going to go back and say insert, and this time I'll do a bar chart. I can do the horizontal one like we saw in the appraisal analysis. And that's going to show me, is somebody sticking out a little bit on the end? Well, Asa, again, is my easy grader. So he's got higher numbers on all of the dimensions. So you can kind of play around with the charts and see which one shows you the information in the way that's best for you. But by pulling the data out of a document analysis report and then manipulating it in an Excel spreadsheet, you can get that Interrater reliability data that you need. If you discover that you don't have very close results, very reliable results between appraisers, then it's time to come up with your calibration plan. And the calibration plan would mean either having them watch a video and each rate it and then discuss how they rated it and why, and come to a consensus so that everybody's looking for the same things. It might mean doing those small groups where you go into a classroom, 3 or 5 evaluators, watch a lesson, rate it, and discuss it. Or it might mean going back through some of the training about what the dimensions actually mean and what each of the look-fors are that the administrators are supposed to be using to score. So that calibration plan is sort of a separate and follow-up piece, but today we're just talking about getting the data to determine if you have inter-rater reliability and then knowing what to do with that after the fact. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.